Everyone. Welcome to another Music Talk Tuesday. I apologize this video is being uploaded late. Unfortunately, I've been fairly busy and have not been able to upload videos until now, but I should be caught up by the end of today. But without further ado, let me address what I wanted to address for this Music Talk Tuesday, and that is sort of something that's a little bit more something related to veterans. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do a book review that is related to veterans since I have pretty much no library when it comes to war books, at least war books that I've already reviewed. So I have to probably start getting on that and seeing if I can find some more war-related content as far as books are concerned. But I think hopefully the Classic Movie Monday as well as this particular video will sort of make up for the lack of a book review that is not veteran related. So without further ado, I wanted to address for this Music Talk Tuesday in particular war TV movie theme songs. Now these songs in particular are sort of replayed throughout the show or film, or they're just kind of used as sort of the kind of intro. And again, sort of try to give a unique perspective. Because I think what's interesting, in large part, I think about a lot of war films, is that since there have been such a variety of different wars throughout history, there's really a lot that you can really explore as far as this genre is concerned. And I think in doing so, they've really created some unique ideas and also have incorporated a lot of those ideas within the music. So without further ado, let me address what I want to address the first song. And that is the Pacific theme. And this is from, in particular, the show, The Pacific, which basically revolves around World War II, but instead of focusing on Germany and Europe, it's largely about the war in the Pacific, in particular against the Japanese. And in this case, it follows the perspective of various Americans that have been through that end of, or that side of World War II. And what I really enjoy in particular about the theme is the song gives you a real sense of chills, like just the way that it just even starts, like with its opening notes. You really do feel like it's trying to draw in the audience, and it's trying to get the audience to understand what the show is ultimately supposed to be about, or at least trying to convey. And I think what's also very interesting and unique about this song is sort of the courageous element that I think exists within it, largely through its instrumentals. And again, this is all instrumental work. This has no vocals to it. And what I really like too as well about this particular theme is when you see the opening, it's also nice to see the images. In particular, this intro is rather unique because instead of doing it in a way of just, here's so-and-so's character, here's so-and-so's character, blah, 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 which a lot of intros really do, this one draws out the various characters and sort of uses this kind of really chalked pencil or something, some kind of writing utensil, and creates these very sketched out images, and ultimately present. And I think when it's sketched out in this way, it kind of presents a unique picture that you don't oftentimes see in a lot of these war intro miniseries or films. And I think for this particular show, I think it really works to the song's advantage and really does give it that extra weight to it as well. And I think largely the war in the Pacific was primarily about kind of more going into the kind of unknown and the unexpected, because a large part of the Pacific was fought through various islands and whatnot. So I think in particular the theme does really sort of convey that maybe element of mystery, but mixes it in with this sense of courage and willing to move forward regardless of the unknown. And I think that's really what ultimately I think makes the theme sound like something that was fairly well done and what you would expect a professional who's working on such a series to do. So overall well done, and I think very interesting, and again conveys a lot, in particular the kinds of heroism and courage that you would expect, in particular from a series that largely is primarily involved around World War II. Second theme that I wanted to briefly address is another one that revolves around World War II, but instead of the Pacific, it revolves around the events within Europe and Germany. And that is the Band of Brothers theme. This one is actually rather interesting and uniquely different to the Pacific theme, because where I think the Pacific theme is a little bit more about, this sense of courage and at the same time sort of, I guess you could say, even determination. This song is supposed to, I think, be more haunting and very heartfelt, especially when you consider in large part what the show is about, and primarily it's more about the camaraderie between the various characters, which is, I think, what primarily makes Band of Brothers in particular work so well as a show, and what I think really gets the audience invested into what it's ultimately offering. And there is such a beauty to it, though, as well. And combined with the images, you really do feel like it resonates. It really displays to you a deeper level of emotions. And where I think the specific theme is a little bit more straightforward in what it's ultimately trying to get you across, Band of Brothers, I think, just combines so many different kinds of emotions within it that it's really hard to pin exactly down what it's ultimately trying to specifically convey. But I think that ultimately works because, again, with this kind of a setup of a war miniseries, you have a variety of characters going through various different circumstances, different personalities, different ways in which they handle the whole situations that they end up being put in. So I think it only makes sense that this would combine so many different elements together, and in doing so, I think create something that is very touching. Like it kind of gets you, at least for me, it gets me in the feels, like right there when I see it. It's just very, it just has this this kind of, camaraderie feel that is just so ingrained, that I think it's sort of almost universal to anyone that has ever been involved in such kinds of circumstances that are related to war. So definitely one that really strikes home. Third song that I wanted to briefly mention is from a film, and in this case, Saving Private Ryan, and that's the Hymn to the Fallen. What I think is interesting about this film is kind of how it sort of combines certain parts of the Band of Brothers theme as well as the Pacific, because it has this very quiet sort of build up. There's a little bit of that haunting choir that that goes on throughout, and at the same time there's also this real sense of honor. And when you sort of hear the trumpets and the drums, you really do feel that patriotism sort of shine through. And even though specifically this theme is primarily tied to the film of Saving Private Ryan, which was about World War II, I think this one can be applied in a more universal sense, only because it doesn't, even though it might be played within the film, it's not like it's, the starting song, like unlike the previous two songs that I've mentioned. So I think, again, it's just one of those themes that I think, even if, you could play it for any kind of war sort of memorial, and I think it would still gather those same emotions and feelings that often people would come to think of when it involves people who have laid themselves or put their lives on the line for other people. So I think that's really what really ultimately works well to the song's advantage, is because you do feel that sense of courage and honor and strength, but then you also feel that sense of the whole element of being kind of vulnerable, and maybe potentially having suffered, and I think that's largely, again, driven through a lot of the side of the song that sounds a lot like the Band of Brothers theme, where they have the choir and they have the very kind of quiet and then the very intense moments. And again, there's a lot of build up to this song too, so it starts off quiet and then you get to this moment where it's just like, oh, it's almost kind of like opening the gates, so to speak, of I don't know if you could classify it heaven or whatnot, but it just opens up this kind of I guess you could say, beauty to it that is of again, that is, I think, trying to be reflective of the courage and the honor that we sort of try to give back to the people who again were putting themselves out there for the country. Second to last song that I wanted to briefly mention is the Great Escape theme. I enjoy this theme because it's simple, and at the same time it's actually upbeat. Out of all the other songs that I'm mentioning on this list, it is probably the most again, it's funny because the Great Escape, although largely some parts of at least the film are rather challenging from the protagonist's point of view, especially when they try to find a way to escape. But you do feel that sense of patriotism, like it's very, kind of upbeat, like, you're not gonna get yourself down, you know, you're just gonna keep going back up again and try another time, you know. You know, you're kind of, it's supposed to, I think, reflect onto the more lighthearted moments that I guess people sort of have when they're in these kinds of circumstances. And I think even if you see the film The Great Escape, you'll sort of see what I'm talking about when, you know, the people kind of bond and have some kind of camaraderie, so to speak. So um, again, it's not too complex in how it sounds, but it's great because it's unique from the perspective of how it showcases the tone, and does so in a way that, again, is fun to, at least in my opinion, listen to, and I think can be engaging on certain levels as well because it's fun, and it makes you want to kind of watch the film too, and sort of see what those people sort of went through as well, you know, sort of being in the being prisoners of war. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about that song. And lastly, Letters from Iwo Jima. This film in particular does focus itself on the Japanese perspective, which is something that I think a lot of people praise this film for because it deviates from telling it through the American perspective, which is something that we've seen through a variety of different films and as well as television. So it only makes sense that there would be a very also great theme attached to this film. And this one is also really unique. There is this sort of beauty to it, and you can kind of sense a little bit too of the Japanese culture, maybe a little bit incorporated throughout. Even though I don't think it really sounds a lot like something that that some people I think would consider Japanese, because again, it doesn't have really any Japanese instruments, but it does have certain elements that I think when you listen to it, you know, you kind of think that it's supposed to be reflective onto that culture. But it sort of does similar in what to the Hymn to the Fallen does, which is sort of combine this haunting, kind of sad element with this feeling of patriotism as well as honor and courage, and you sort of see that through the trumpet, the sort of, again, honor and courage, and then, you know, the sadness through the piano, and the way in which the piano is played is, I think, really beautifully orchestrated, and I think really works for a song that is trying to kind of address the, you know, the real pain that comes with fighting and being in these horrible circumstances. And for a film like this, I think the way in which this theme presents itself really does enhance, I think, the film's overall messages. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about all of these themes. I'll be sure to put links below so that you may all enjoy them. But I think that's ultimately all I can say for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.